So I see again a very limited number of students. Okay, I'll wait for another few minutes and thereafter we'll start the class. Today we'll be discussing about aircraft hijacking. And by the time, if you have any questions, you can ask about yesterday's class. So shall we start the class?
Ma'am.
So today's topic of our discussion is about aircraft hijacking. As I have discussed with you previously, that We'll be taking up small topics, and because again, air law is a vast, vast topic. So right now we are just focusing on civil aviation part. So in this again, what is aircraft hijacking? So as we know, this is the only terminology you might be acquainted with while it comes to your idea about having idea of air law, right? So aircraft again hijacking, you might have heard, you might have seen in movies, right? And there were so many options while we were discussing about this topic of aircraft hijacking. So aircraft hijacking is again a attack or a terrorist attempt wherein there are motives behind it. Okay, motives as to, maybe with the use of threat or with the use of some technology, or you can say some ideas, and by the idea of controlling or making creating a threat, or creating a havoc in the in the minds of people by taking power or control over the aircraft which is in flight. In flight hereby means who is in under in the flight, and it's still moving and it is in the air while it had happened, right? So in regards to control of this terrorist activity, again it is instilling fear in the minds of people, in order to avoid using the air technology and air law. So we had the the idea was to control such attacks, or would you call such terrorist activities, in order to control or take power over or decide in regards to controlling of such activities. Okay, so let me just share the slide with you so that you could understand it better. So what do you understand by aircraft hijacking, or have you heard of some incidents or some, you could relate? Can you share it with me, class, while I'm just sharing the PPT with you?
As of now, I've seen in movies only.
Can you tell me some case which was described in some movie or so?
Ma'am, I have seen, like, I don't know I'm not remembering the movie name, but in some movie I've seen, ma'am, they are hijacking the one person will be there and he will be creating fear among the person, then you should not leave the flight or something like that. I've seen.
Hmm.
Ma'am, there are a lot of movies on hijacking. There's Bell Bottom and there's Ninja also, if I remember.
Yes,
Right.
nice. So are you aware of the cases related to this, or are these real movies based on real incidents?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. True facts.
Yes. So, why do we need law for such air hijackings? Or like, what do you think there needs to be a regulation for this? Anyone from you? So, do you think it is having some relevance under international law? So, for example, you described about Ninja. So, Ninja was again a movie based on a crew member who helped the passengers to escape the hijacking, and she gave over her life also in regards to protect and secure the passengers who were in on the plane. So firstly, I would like to tell you hijacking or skyjacking, it's also called skyjacking. is uh, in order to fulfill some goals or some, fulfill some desires, intentions of some people who have to fulfill their uh, the vision they have hijacked it for, or maybe they might have hijacked it for some reason in contention to, if they want to move from one place to another and they are unable to do so. So in order to, by creating the fear in minds of people and fear in the minds of the government on taking possession of innocent people, and thereafter moving on to their intended measures. So I have sent the PPT. Are you able to see it? Yes, class?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, let me share it to this as well and on the screen so that you can see it better. Yes, so are you able to see the screen now?
Ma'am.
So again, meaning to this context. So as I was telling you about ICAO, yesterday we discussed that it is an organization which was drafted and it came into power through the convention, the air law convention, wherein the first idea of aviation security had emerged. So aviation security is the foremost thing. Even if you might have heard that there is so many security checks, there are the luggage is being cross checked twice or thrice. They have checked for any some of the any aircraft which the luggage you have to send to the aircraft should not contain some amounts of goods which are they are able to create a threat in the minds of the passengers or the pilot or the crew members. So it is for the sake of the security, because again in regards to security, it is the responsibility of the state to ensure safe and secure, without any threat, peace and security of all the nations. That is why we have so many security checks. That is why we have secured, again, aviation law security is there. So while talking about hijacking, it is another form of terrorist activity. It is a form of terrorism, international terrorism. It is like illegal capturing of aircraft, or you can say air machine, you know uh, in order to control an aircraft and in order to achieve some aims or to reach a desired destination. It is maybe through unlawful seizure of the aircraft in order to sabotage, attack on the aircraft, right? And even while attacking the aircraft on the ground, and also it is an unlawful act against the civil aviation, right? So in the Hague Convention of 1970 that we have read yesterday, we did discuss about ICAO, International Civil Aviation Organization. It declared that any person who forcibly takes control of the aircraft during the flight is referred to as a criminal. And also in Montreal Convention of 1971, it was declared that any person who attacks an aircraft or on a ground facility or destroys an aircraft is a criminal. So these were the laws which were started to frame out. Okay. So these all have to be necessitated the suppression and decrease of such air hijacks, right? So again, to control this aircraft hijacking, because of it is an unlawful activity. Again, if you try and conclude it through the meaning of aircraft hijacking, it contains a few elements. While we discussed, criminal law, we always talk about the criminal elements of that. We talk about mens rea, we talk about and what were the elements that contended it to become a criminal activity. Okay, the first thing that is what if an activity is done of a nature of hijacking, it has to contain a few elements. So the first is that it should be committed on board aircraft, right? Or in flight aircraft. So it must be full. And it is committed, the second thing is it is committed with force or a threat of force or any form of intimidation, right? Third, it is committed against who those persons who are in control of that aircraft or are present in that aircraft. Okay, and last, it is committed against those, in order to achieve certain aims or to reach a desired location. Okay, if any activity fulfills all these four elements, it is called an aircraft hijack or a aircraft or a skyjack. Okay, so in order to control or suppress these, we had to draft and we had to take up various conventions again. And these conventions were later converted into national legislations for individual nation states. Because, as I told you, it is the responsibility of the states and it is a responsibility of international law in particular that such criminal activities or acts of international terrorism should be set under control. Okay, so if we go about the history, the first recorded hijack occurred in 1931. Again, they were Peruvian revolutionaries, and they tried to hijack a motor, a Ford Tri-motor. And in 1937, they had planted a bomb which exploded in New Jersey. And the first actual hijack that was commercial hijack that led to the crash of Cathay Pacific aircraft was in 1948. That was in flight aircraft which was hijacked. Okay, so the conventions that are related to aviation security. So these are the important conventions that are related to aviation security. And the very first convention is the Tokyo Convention, which was signed in 1963. So in this convention, there was a conference that was held in Tokyo in 1963, and this convention actually came into force in 1969. It was it was in order to make a penal law against such activities which jeopardizes the safety of the aircraft, right? Or maybe jeopardizes the good order and discipline of the board. Okay, and the second thing this is about is again this convention relates to when there is a reasonable amount of acts which are whether they are offenses or whether they may be jeopardizing the discipline of the board, it shall apply to the respect of such offenses which are committed by any person or the board who are in the flight, which has elaborated. Just a moment, soon. Yes, I'm so sorry for the interruption. Uh, so again, we're talking about the Tokyo Convention. Again, this, firstly, I was telling you that this convention actually makes clear, about the offenses and the penal law which was drafted, and the very like objectives of this convention is firstly that the state of the aircraft registration should have authority, and law is applicable to such events that are occurring on board or while the aircraft is in flight. Okay, so that is the foremost objective that is to be taken in mind while we are considering the Tokyo Convention. So the second convention, the second principle or the objective which governs this convention is that the aircraft commander with having the necessary authority to tackle persons who have committed or are about to commit a crime or any act that may jeopardize the persons on board by use of some force or maybe creation of fear or maybe retaliation or any act of violence. Okay. Third, that is, it alienates or not allows the crew or the persons in control of the aircraft to perform its duties. Okay. So if any of these areas or the people who had trying to control over the aircraft, not allowing the persons in charge to perform their duties. Okay, the fourth thing that is to be considered as the foremost thing in this convention was about, you know, is the convention defined the term of hijacking. So the Tokyo Convention actually applies to criminal offenses and the acts which are committed to jeopardize the safety of the aircraft. Okay, are you following class? Or there is any doubt you may ask? Yes, Prachi, any doubt?
No, ma'am.
So was the very first convention that talked about this aircraft hijacking, and it tried to define or relate the activities which may amount to the crime of hijacking, right? So for this convention also, it was to protect the life and property of the persons who are on board, while the aircraft is in flight. So from the moment you can say the takeoff happens or until they have landed and securely to the airports, this convention can be applicable to those people as well as the aircraft. So it also recognizes the jurisdiction, that is, the criminal jurisdiction of the aircraft in respect of such offenses that are committed. It will be the territory of that particular state where the aircraft is placed. Okay. Or maybe against the aircraft where it belongs and where the aircraft has landed, right? So this convention had a few failures in regards to, while we were talking about, convention, and it has been criticized because it had a few deficiencies. So the first deficiency, that the term hijacking was defined, but it was not properly stated, what not properly you know explained, or you can say the it was not regarded proper as a crime. Okay, so the convention also fails to list any offenses or a particular, name any particular offenses in order to suppress or prosecute the criminals or the offenders. They have created an outline of the offense but have not enlisted the complete offenses. And Also, it fails to develop a system of importance of priorities that govern the jurisdictions, that may be about the registrations of aircrafts, or how could the aircrafts get acknowledged, or whose criminal jurisdiction will lie for the aircrafts. Again, lastly, it is the convention which is silent on the character of the national of the state, who's like relating to the passengers who will be maybe not the nationals of the state to which the aircraft might belong. There may be some nationals of other states as well. So while they talk about the registry, they have not made anything clear while discussing the nationality, the jurisdiction, right, etc. This was about the Tokyo Convention. That was the first attempt to legalize or to provide the legal regime for onboard aircraft. Is it clear the first convention related to aircraft hijacking?
Yes, ma'am.
So, the second convention is the Hague Convention of 1970. So, this convention was an addition, or you can say upgradation of the Tokyo Convention. So the laws, the anti-hijacking provisions that were enacted in the Tokyo Convention, they were again upgraded, or you can say they were the inadequacies of the Tokyo Convention were completed, were taken up by the second convention, that is the Hague Convention, right? And also the in order to demonstrate the dimensions of the aerial hijacking that had begun through the 1960s, because in 1960s this convention the aircraft hijackings were at a huge height. It was um, there was an alarming increase in successful hijackings of aircrafts because of the lack of regulations, lack of aerial rules, or aerial or you can say laws. So this convention defined various offenses in regards to the aircrafts, onboard aircrafts. So unlawfully, or maybe by the use of threat or force, in if anybody tries to perform such act of violence, and is also if the person is an accomplice to a person who has performed or attempted to create a threat or intimidation on of into an onboard flight or the aircraft. This would be the actual wrongdoer, and his compliance, the person who is helping him out, will be also under the same category and will be the wrongdoer under this convention. So, this convention readily described the offense of hijacking and the elements that would amount to the activity of aircraft hijack, right? Also, this convention spoke about the requirement of the contracting or the consenting states who are the signatories of this convention to make these offenses of uh, aircraft hijacking with punishable with severe penalties. Okay, so the convention applies in international law as well as for domestic flights. So this convention made it very clear that it will be applicable if a contracting party or the contracting state is a signatory to this convention, right? So it would be same, and it will also be it will be applicable to the domestic as well as international flights. Okay, so it this convention is also in additionally you can say apart, while it is that there is a force in case of forceful landings. during hijack, there are generally a forceful landing. It applies there also. Okay, so it tried to complete out all the loopholes which were left by the Tokyo Convention. So, are you able to understand? This convention also talked about, you know, to possess the custody of the offenders, to either to extradite the offender or submit the case for prosecution if they have committed any offense against any against the aircraft of a particular nation or nation state. They are to be sent to the respective nation state to, or they should be extradited to that nation state, and they should be sent it for prosecution, right? So it also requires that nation states should assist each other in connection to proceed with the criminal proceedings that are brought under this convention. Is it clear? So the two important things that it made it clear was it is inclusive of the domestic laws, that uh, aircraft hijacking should be made a part of their national laws or domestic laws, and also it spoke about the severe penalties and the custody of offenders and its prosecution, and also made the definition of the offense of aircraft hijacking much more clearer. Is it clear? Shall I move forward, class? Are you following? Nobody is listening?
Yes, ma'am. Please continue.
Perfect. So, the next convention, that was the Montreal Convention. So this convention, again was brought to notice that what are the can say the facilities for aerial navigation if they result in some amount of damage, or what will be the you can say demarcation of a forceful, you can say sabotaging of an aircraft, and that certain activities that were done. Okay, so firstly, this convention was to suppress any unlawful activity against the safety of civil aviation. Okay, so the convention, lays down a few ideas, that is, at any person who has committed an offense, if he unlawfully or intentionally performs any act of violence that may endanger the people at the the crew or the passengers, or may damage any aircraft or any facilities that are provided for aircraft, or any navigation facilities, or ensures any endangerment of safety of an aircraft, or also endangers um, the process of communication, or provides any false information that may endanger the aircraft as well as the passengers present or the crew present in the aircraft. So this was an addition, that there was an offense that was defined if there is some damage done to the aircraft in particular and to its facilities, or any wrongful communication which may lead to some damage or endangers the safety of the aircraft. So this was defining the offenses of particular, it will also amount to aircraft hijacking. Okay, so these were the attempts that were made, that in order to provide this Montreal Convention is to protect the people, protect the aircraft in particular, that would not ensure the safety of the aviation law in this regime. So provisions that are related to Montreal Convention are again the similar, that is they have to extradite or prosecute. They are similar to the Hague Convention, and also they had to it was like an addition that these offenses were added to the aircraft hijacking. Is it clear? The Montreal Convention of 1971, it had added a few more offenses that amounts to aircraft hijacking. Is it clear, class? So
Yes, ma'am.
another addition to this Montreal Protocol was Montreal Protocol in 1988. It was an addition or extension of the Montreal Convention to the airports, and prohibition of any activities of violence at the airports or destruction or damage to the airport facilities. So this was again with an effort of ICAO, the International Council of Aviation, International ICAO, that international civil aviation should ensure that what if a person or a group of person are doing any unlawful activity or acts of violence at the airport against the persons or people that are present at the airport, which may ensure any likely cause of danger or injury or serious damage to any facilities or any disruptions of service of the airport, severe penalties will be amounting to them, and it would depend on the complicity of the offense. So parties to the protocol would be expected that they should ensure proper jurisdiction of offenses that are committed in the territory, but also alleged that offense is present in their territory and is not present elsewhere. So if it is done otherwise, they will have to extradite the offender to the state where the act was committed. Is it clear? So it had given a new perspective that all these activities, if even if performed at the airports, and if any persons or people are damage are put to threat or put to injury in this idea, will also amount to aircraft hijacking. Okay, so that is the reason why we have so many protocols at the airports. We have so many proper channel light, and there are fines as well as punishments, severe punishments if the rules and regulations are not followed at the respective airports. Is it clear? So the next convention is the Montreal Convention of 1991, which is about the marking of plastics explosive for the purpose of detection. So, International Conference on Air Law, adopted this convention in regards to the detection of the convention tries basically to control and prevent the manufacture. For example, if I tell you, generally you are not supposed to carry any kind of explosive while you are traveling in any aircraft. So this is, you know, if in order to prohibit and prevent the manufacture of unmarked explosives, as well as the movement of such explosive from one nation to another or one territory to another, all the plastic explosive have to be marked by manufacturers as the detection agents. It is upon the uh, take of the nation states to prevent the manufacture or exert any control or the possession of any unmarked explosive. And technically, it is not an aviation thing, it is to control the military, you can say the military or the police functions, and it is to set out the difference between civil aviation as well as um, to ensure safety of the aircraft and the crew and the passengers as much as possible, because carrying of explosives or any kind of plastic explosive or whatsoever should be not a safe thing to do under aviation while there is an aircraft which is in flight or on board, right? So this was again another idea, or again another point that is to be put across, that we should separate out the explosives, the military and the police functions, as well as the normal civil aviation, right? So last we just discussed about the case studies. The very first case study that was the highlight of, you know, this the aircraft hijacking was the World Trade Center at Pentagon. So this is the most famous case, as you all know, the 9/11 incident, and it was the most, you can say, audacious incident that was, since the World War II, it is considered to the most terrifying experience that had occurred, landmark incidents that had occurred, wherein the mighty twin story building of the World Trade Center at the New York and Washington was struck by two hijacked planes, and they were crashed into the Washington at Pentagon, and two of them were sent to the World Trade Center, and they were uh, set across, and it was crashed on the floors of WTC. So this led, you know, these three aircrafts were basically hijacked. Two were sent to crash the World Trade Center, and one was sent to Pentagon at Washington. And they were hijacked from, first one was from Los Angeles, the second was hijacked from Boston. And these planes were hijacked to result into mass destruction and mass disruption. More than, if you talk about this incident, more than 6,000 people had lost their lives, and innumerable actually had dreadful injuries. This incident, the world community had been condemning the aircraft hijackings, right? So this was again, three flights were involved in this, and the Talibans were involved in this. And as we know, US claimed that Saudi-born Osama bin Laden is the prime suspect, and he was from the Taliban regime. And again, it was, the Secretary General of UN condemned this statement, and through this, the Security Council had defined the international terrorism in regards to, it is an attack to the whole humanity. And again, this was the determination to prevent such acts. And the war against terrorism was started, and many cruise missiles were sent to bin Laden's hideouts, and various terrorist camps in Afghanistan were set out by, the US. And these carriers were sent to take the hold of, the various operations of against bin Laden was sent, that were called Operation Infinite Justice, right? And again, it was indeed a remarkable, that a country like Pakistan, uh, who was a staunch supporter of Taliban, and which had given the recognition and still recognizes it, even after the Commission of Inhuman Act, had also supported the mission with the US. And this was highlighted, and this way they could, you can say, um, end the terrorism.
Ma'am, wasn't Osama bin Laden a part of Al Qaeda and not Taliban?
Yes. That was a Taliban regime only, na. Al Qaeda was the group name.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. Yeah.
So I'll tell you about more about this. So a Taliban, is considered basically a group of people or a group of students who used to study, and they had a very many followers, and that had converted themselves, and because of the repeated war with Soviet Union, if you remember, that is how the Taliban had emerged. So Al Qaeda was the name of their troop who had actually attacked. Okay. And the Taliban regime sheltered bin Laden while he was extradited to US, and thereafter he was arrested and the trial had begun, right? So again, if you talk about Taliban, they have again attacked Afghanistan. Have got the total control over it. They were sent away by the US after 9/11 only, but now they are set free again because US has withdrawn its troops from the Afghanistan. This was the last. If you remember, I've sent you an article. I think if you remember, then it was you could read it about more about Taliban and its regime. Hello, are you able to hear me, class? I thought I lost the connection.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Okay. Okay. Right. So moving on to uh, the next, uh, another case that we'll discuss is about Libya versus the US. So in this, again, it was an attempt of the US to bring justice to two Libyan nationals who had allegedly put a bomb on board on Pan Am flight 103 that exploded over Lockerbie, Scotland. So this is also called the Lockerbie case. So in this case, again, you know, uh, because the Montreal Convention had required that Libya either to prosecute or extradite the students who were committing this offense that had actually destroyed the civil aircraft, right? So the Libya contended that it was prosecuting the preparators under its domestic law. So they wanted to took over, you can say, one because they had set up explosives in the aircraft, which because of that it had bombarded and it had exploded, and around 170 persons had died in that explosion in Niger in 1989, right? So Libya was urged to immediately provide a full response, and requested in order to eliminate this international terrorism of hijacking. So the Libyan government did not respond to such a request. It contended that they do not have such laws, and uh, they had they had to prosecute their alleged offenders under their own domestic law. It had relied for Article 14 of this Convention of Montreal Convention, which actually provides that any dispute over the interpretation and application of the convention is to be settled through negotiation and should be submitted to arbitration. So, as I told you, if we talk about international law, it is to be accepted and mutually related and mutually consented. So, the convention basically provides solutions through either conciliation, mediation, or arbitration. So, according to Article 14 of the Montreal Convention, it had submitted that it should be, it should be interpreted and application should be done through negotiation. But US and the UK were insisting that Libya should promptly surrender the suspects for the trial to the British authorities, because again, because they had to put the criminals on remand and pay, accordingly they could make them under their jurisdiction, as well as make them pay for the appropriate compensations. So for that reason, Libya had approached ICJ. The second thing that was done by Libya was they had approached ICJ, International Court of Justice, to promptly take any provisional measures to prevent and preserve the rights of these two Libyan nationals and other US to seize and remove their control from any threats against Libya, right? So it appeared that Libya had complied with the convention, and according to them, they denied that uh, US had not complied with the convention. So this was the contention that was made by Libya to the ICJ, right? So, but Americans were very much convinced that Libyan government was also involved in this criminal activity and will not accept, to prosecute or willingly accept to prosecute these criminal suspects. And in order to persuade the Security Council to intervene, so the Security Council with ICJ decided and examined this case and found out that that under Article 25 of the UN Charter, both Libya and the US were obligated to carry out the decisions of Security Council, right? So the court denied all the obligations and international agreements and requested the Libya was denied the request of any negotiation that they wanted, and they were to hand over and this convicted people from Libya, and they were the decision was unanimously decided, right? Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
So I'll stop here, or you want me to discuss the last Indian case? It's your call, students. Shall I discuss it tomorrow?
Ma'am, tomorrow we discuss, ma'am. We have one more class to join.
Okay, perfectly fine. Tomorrow we'll discuss aircraft hijacking in India, and we'll talk about the Anti-Hijacking Act of 2016, and we'll talk about a few cases are related to Indian Airlines. So I hereby end the class. And if you have any questions, you can always ask me, and try reading more and more case studies regarding aircraft hijacking, because there are many, many, so that you can understand this better. Is it clear? So I am just ending the slide. I'll just take the attendance for the while. I'm not taking the attendance. So just wait for a few minutes. Yeah, right. So thank you, class. Have a nice day. See you tomorrow.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.